We're going to talk this morning, we're going to talk about failure. That's what we're going to do this morning. So Gina is one of my favorite people in Silicon Valley. She's a woman who I think represents a great role of leadership, I think, to women in Silicon Valley, to men too, don't worry guys, to get that too. But let's start really carrying over the themes from this morning. The theme that Chip started, we're talking about the emotional side of business. Let's talk a little bit about your experience as you in leadership, and maybe as you've learned in leadership about staying connected on that level, both with the people who you're working with and the people who you're working for.
You mean on an emotional level?
Yeah.
It's important. In all seriousness, I think one of the best things someone said to me once, and I think it's pretty well acknowledged, which is you can tell the product, the team that built the product, and you can look at the product and understand the team dynamics as well. And that basically those two things are so interconnected, especially in the world we live in terms of building software and building digital products. And I think that as a result of that, the thing that you have almost more control over is the team that you're putting together, the team dynamics that you're putting together, how you address things that come up on the team. And that gets reflected in a number of different ways in terms of business advantage, whether that's how fast you can move, the kinds of insights that you can have, whether you live on a team and work on a team with rigorous debates, whether or not you're able to bring to life a new product and then continue to iterate it because you're willing to talk about what's right about it, but also probably more importantly what's wrong about it. And I think that you can't look at the structure that you put together as a team from the it, if you will, the we, which is the interpersonal dynamics people have, and then also what are the individual motivations of everybody who's on your team. I feel like this is perhaps more general, but I think it's a really important place to sort of start in terms of where are issues going to arise, but also where the opportunities are. And for the world of creating software, I think it starts and it stops with the team.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before the session about, from the product perspective, how especially in the realm of social media today, where you'll launch a product, everybody like, oh, I love it, or lots of likes on the page, but the feedback isn't necessarily constructive, which means you don't actually get to fail in that cycle. No product as it launches is perfect. Maybe you can share a little bit of your perspective of, from the product development perspective, the lessons that you've learned about what kind of feedback you should be taking from people as you're starting to build something.
Because we live in such an interconnected world, nobody wants to actually come out and say, I don't really get what you're doing. Because you probably also have a product or are working on a team with a product, and you don't necessarily want somebody to say that to you. And so we get into this, especially when you look at online. If you look at any day that a new product launches, which is pretty much every day, you see just this thread of, congratulations, such an awesome job. And it's almost actually, once you get through that cycle, that you start to understand what's real about what you've built and what's not real about what you've built. And the good news is that you get, you can accelerate that cycle in a couple of probably pretty important ways. But for example, we put out a new version of the Mightybell product in June, and we didn't talk about it. And the reason we didn't go out and talk to 14 different people about it and make a big deal is because from my perspective, it wasn't going to be helpful to us to get that, oh my God, congratulations, this is amazing, so awesome. I actually wanted to see what the numbers were that would happen when someone just came, not because they knew anybody on the team, or it was my mom or whomever.
The people who have to like it.
The people who have to like it, but instead actually stay focused on how people are actually using a product. Because I think that the rest can be very noisy and very confusing, because you're like, oh my God, I showed this to this person, they totally love it, we're this is gonna change the world. And then you're sitting there and it's like crickets, with the actual numbers themselves. And so, at least from our perspective, we found it to be actually even more important to undersell what we're doing and to just really stay focused on what are the actual quantitative numbers that we're generating with our product and how can we improve those, and then going out for press and social media and all this other stuff once it's very clear that all the pieces are in place. I think there's been some recent examples of trying to do the Big Bang launch, and
can you cite one in particular?
I'm sure there's a few. They typically involve a large dollar amount associated with the fundraising process and a very early stage product.
That's maybe not real yet.
That might not be real yet. And I just don't think, I think that's actually setting people up for like the big failure without a lot of, if you look at it, that's never really worked. So, not to mention the fact you look like an asshole. So you look like an asshole and it doesn't work, which doesn't sort of seem like a great way of launching, new products. Because, what we do, one of the things that's been so important to me is looking myself in the mirror and saying, am I prepared to publicly fail? Am I prepared and am I okay? Do I care enough about what I'm doing to sit up here in front of you guys and say, that was a total dog? And the answer is yes. Because I don't believe that you can actually build anything new and do anything that interesting if you're not willing to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm willing to put myself out there, I'm willing to be vulnerable, I'm willing to have haters, I'm willing to be, called every name in the book. I'm willing to do this because I think what I'm doing, what my mission is so important that it's worth it to me no matter what happens.
So there were some haters who came after you at one point after a
which time?
Which time? A fairly well-known cover photo of you on a magazine. There were some people who gave you a hard time. Did anyone ever you see the cover of Gina?
There were like two people, and one of them was Owen Thomas at Value who was like something about my boobs. And everybody else was pretty cool about it.
It was a Fast Company cover. It was their second best-selling cover that year, next to only Steve Jobs. So not such bad company. But Gina's in this awesome kind of like wife-beater t-shirt, and she looks badass. It's an awesome picture. But there were some people who commented, you're using your femininity, you're using, the female card in an inappropriate manner, but that wasn't what it was about. You were able to really step up and be okay with it. And the article was really quite flattering.
Yes.
Just giving you nothing. So what? But in terms of, for the female entrepreneurs,
I've seen people get a lot more shit than I got for that. So, the message is very clear, certainly to women in Silicon Valley, which is, put your head down and just keep delivering, because we don't want any of that other stuff.
So what would you say to the female entrepreneurs in the room about that?
Don't listen to them.
So when we were preparing to talk today, we were talking a little bit about what failures look like. And you had a very interesting perspective that it's not about those colossal failures, it's about the small failures. So I want to start with, what is the first failure that of which you have a cognitive memory that you really learned something from?
When I was in 3rd grade, I was a competitive race walker, which is so weird, I know. I was a Cupertino Yearlings, it was our track team, and my godfather was an Olympic race walker, so I was a race walker, and I was getting ready for this big state meet. And I got there late. My mom was late. I was in 3rd grade, so I was not driving yet. And
Underachiever.
My mom was late, and I got there and I missed my race. And it was totally crushing, because obviously I wanted to race and I wanted to do really well. It's certainly one of those moments and one of those times, and I think that this has actually been a thread starting very early, which is, I could have actually been a victim at that moment. My mom got me there late, feeling sorry for myself, and I didn't. Like, that just wasn't my MO. And when I think about any number of things that happened to any of us sitting in this room, and certainly happened in my life, whether it was, you know, my dad being killed when I was 11, or whether it was, you know, not winning vice president of my high school. I know these things matter. It's not about what happens to you, it's what you do about it. It's what is that next step? How do you respond from failure? How do you respond from disappointments? And that's really where, for me, I stay very focused, and I can't say I've always been very good at this, but try to stay focused on the things I can control, and to look at life as a series of small moments that I have some control over my contribution to those moments. So, you know, anything I've looked at that are, you know, public failures of my own or other people, you can typically trace them back to teams ignoring the viewpoint of the person that continues to make the same point over and over again, that, you know, the rings are broken. And basically the teams start to ignore that person. You can trace so much of the big colossal failures back to decisions that were made in small moments. And that's where I look at every week as like, what did I learn this week? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? How can I take into next week what I learned in this one? And I spend a lot less time, as I've gotten older, trying to do things that are towards some external result that I value the external result more than, did I do everything I possibly can do in this situation to drive the right results or the things that I believe in? And I have to say, it's so much more relaxing and so much more fun, and I find myself actually working harder in a more engaged way, because it doesn't feel like there's this big scary world out there that's like coming crashing down on me. Not like I was ever that operated against that kind of reality for myself, but certainly the more I feel like I am in control of my own destiny, and that failure and mistakes and fucking up, are we allowed to say that here? Is a part of that process, and that it is a process, I have found that it is so much more fun to fail. And it is so much more fun to succeed, because I care a lot less. The joy is in learning every single week. And I know that sounds like such a terrible cliche, as if I live this like great life in Palo Alto. And it's pretty cool because that's what I'm focused on.